Lessons for a Happy Marriage, Part 3. And my name is Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. And you could just watch this video if you don't want to go back to parts 1 and 2, but I think you would find them very interesting. So, the Lessons for a Happy Marriage is a book that I wrote, but this is not what the book is. I wrote the book a long time ago, and it was when I had first started helping couples with their marriages, but after I had already had enough experience to know that what I was sharing was realistic and helpful. And in the last 2 videos, in the first one, we talked about the fact that you're a soul, that your marriage is a spiritual path. Because you're a soul, it's an individual spiritual path where you learn how to align your mind, which is a possession, with your soul so that you could express love for the purpose of happiness. We get married to be happy. And this is a theme I go over all the time. We want to be happy as a result of being married, and we want that happiness to be ever expanding, ever growing as we go through the years. Isn't it so? And in the second video on this topic, I talked about the killers of marriage because it's very difficult to make humongous mistakes and imagine that the good things that you do are going to offset those mistakes. You know, occasionally we'll get a email from someone, because the Marriage Foundation, you could write in and get help from counselors. It's free service. And people will say something like, I cheated on my wife, but in all other areas, I'm a great husband. What? Are you kidding me? It doesn't work that way. Or we hear from women and they go, I don't understand. I do everything for my husband. I cook, I clean, I watch the kids. I have sex with him 17 times a year, and I think he's on dating sites. Well, maybe you didn't do everything. Maybe you're missing certain things, and you're unaware of it. So, those missing things are the positive things that you can do in your marriage. And this is really important. I mean, this is going to be one of the most important things you'll ever hear from me. You cannot just do the things you think you should do in order to please your spouse. It won't work. If I told you, do this, do that, works every time, I would be lying to you. Because one of the great elements in a happy marriage is sincerity. If you're not sincere, but your behavior is like way off the charts positive, well, if you're the husband, your wife has intuition. She's going to see through you like you're a piece of glass. And if you're a wife, and you're doing all these things, he's not going to feel it. Because men marry women for true unconditional love. And behaving in a particular way instead of from your heart doesn't cut it. So I'm going to tell you what you actually need to do rather than giving you a list of things to do. You know, in the first couple I had, I started with a list of things to do and a list of things to not do. And we all thought it was going well. I wasn't charging them for this. We were all learning. And it didn't work. They came back to me. Well, the husband did. And he said, Paul, this stuff is amazing. It's like math, of course. But I can't. I run into these things that I know I shouldn't do, and I do them anyway. And I say things I shouldn't say, even though it's right there in black and white that I shouldn't say it. And I thought, wow. And his biggest issue was anger. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be hard. Why was it going to be hard? Because in the 90s, I wanted to deal with my anger. And for years, all I could do was stuff it, which was not enough. It's like anger management. I developed my own anger management. I looked at anger management courses. I couldn't do it. But now I had new incentive. I really wanted these guys to succeed. So I took a look at anger and I started getting deeper on it, doing a little bit of research. One of the things that I found was very interesting, and that is that anger is the result of thwarted desires. So I thought, okay, you got to deal with your desires. But then I thought, wait a minute, that may be true, but anger is more visceral. It's a deeper, it's reactionary. And I started looking at it and I recognized something that blew my mind. Anger is like the first spark from the physiological drive to survive that gets men set to attack, to defend aggressively, puts a man into action. Women, differently, similar but not quite the same. But men with anger, wow. And I started to have realizations of how this sucker anger suckered us. Why? Because we saw things through twisted vision. We took things that were happening to us as attacks instead of just as things that were happening. It was a flaw in our perception. And that's where I began. Well, I'm going to call him John. I said, John, before you let the anger have total control over you, stop and take a look at this. Evaluate. And then, with a different perspective, because you'll see that you weren't being attacked, your life is not in danger, you can act with wisdom. And that was the birth of a technique that I created called the SO technique. Stop, evaluate, and act with wisdom, which was a marvelous technique. I used it, and my anger was conquered. So the first step, way more important than the do's and the don'ts, is learning how to control your mind. And it's got a dual purpose. The first purpose is to stop the insanity. And you reach a point when you start looking at the internal stuff that's going on in your head, the reactionary things, the habitual reactions. You realize, I'm insane, and you stop, and you're able to control it. But the next thing is beautiful. You start to learn how to bring your love into your mind, infusing your mind with love. And I show you how to do with leverage, how to move it over. And pretty soon you're behaving in a way that is not contrived. It's not manipulative. You're becoming the better you. The you that your spouse fell in love with in the first place. And then the magic happens. It's so beautiful. Now, I've taught a number of counselors my methods. I had one counselor who attended my first group class of counselors. His name happened to be Paul too, and he passed away. But when he told me about his perspective, I said, Paul, you don't need the marriage foundation. He said, I know, but I want to be part of this. This is the first organized reality in marriage counseling that I've ever seen. And he'd been a counselor for 35, 40 years. The guy was awesome. Now, he said everything is about education. And I agree with that. But it's a high level of education. Not high like you can't do it high. High like it's a very spiritual, beautiful thing that you learn, because your marriage is an amazingly beautiful thing when you know how to operate it. You got to learn how to operate your marriage. Just because you have a license to get married, it's not like a driver's license where you have to take a test and you got to prove your skills. Marriage license, you just got to have $35. You don't know how to be married. Therapists don't know how to be married. They have the worst divorce rate of any of us. And it's so simple. Now, there's a lot of moving parts, but it's simplicity, and it's based on very deep, very lofty ideals of love. Love. Love is everything in your marriage, but you're not infusing it into your marriage. You're not giving your love to your spouse unconditionally. And when you do, it's tainted with desires, expectations, anger, all these bizarre things that don't belong in your marriage. All right. I think I'm going to close and ask you to subscribe, ask you to share this, like it, leave a comment if you will. And I wish you the greatest success in your marriage. If we can help you, write into our counselors. It's free. Blessings to you. Blessings to your spouse. Blessings to your family. God bless you.